Secretary.
That's an interesting conundrum, isn't it?
Scott, when you think of that, you look at that. I mean, obviously, it's the idea of election denier, which obviously has a negative connotation as it's being cast. She's sort of threading a needle there, is she not?
Well, every candidate, Kevin and I were discussing this earlier, every candidate is conditioned to show confidence in their own campaign. So to sit there and ask somebody over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, what are you going to do if you lose? What are you going to do if you lose? They're never going to say, well, you're right, I guess I am going to lose. Here's all the things I'm going to do when I... No candidate's going to engage in that rhetoric. So that's number one. Number two, what she said is a perfectly legitimate thing for a candidate to say. I expect to win. If it's fair and transparent and administered fairly in my judgment, I'll accept the results. What else would you want her to say? Well, and by the way, she's not wrong. Her opponent is a Secretary of State.
That's true, but let me ask both of you, because you were weighing on this point.
The intensity that she's getting right now, it's warranted.
Can we go back to Georgia for a second? Because you said some things about Georgia I wanted to respond to. When you said Stacey Abrams believes that voter suppression caused her votes not to be counted, flip the names. That's what Donald Trump believes. He believes that strange things that went on with the rules didn't allow his votes to be counted correctly or somehow inappropriately advantaged Biden. They essentially believe the same thing,
no,
that the rules disadvantage them. And I think they're both wrong.
No.
How can you believe one and not the other?
One point I want to say is Carrie Lake mentioned that Katie Hobbs is the Secretary of State. Well, Brian Kemp was the Secretary of State when he was running and got to decide the election, so there's some parallels there. But what I will say is voter suppression is a part of our country's history. And cases, the Shelby case, we know that voter suppression is real. Donald Trump filed lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit and couldn't win any of them. So they're not the same thing.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. And Stacey Abrams just filed a lawsuit in Georgia, her organization, to challenge the Georgia voting laws, which she says are voter suppression, and a judge threw it out and said they couldn't produce evidence of a single instance where a voter was suppressed.
Well, now you're talking my language in the courtroom now.
Where they wanted information from him, which I do not expect we're ever going to see.
But why did they wait? This has been my question. He was the focus of this from day one. They always knew they wanted him to answer questions and answer for January the 6th. Isn't doing it now just a PR stunt? I mean, as you say, he's not going to deal with this. The Justice Department's not going to deal with this. He's not going to answer this. He'd be crazy to.
But hold on, is it a foregone conclusion that he will not play if they set up the circumstances where he can have the free reign of the microphone? I mean, obviously, as a lawyer, I would not advise my client to speak. Nope. I think you'd be the same way. But he has been asking when the impeachments came down, look, he wanted his, virtual day in the court of public opinion. Is it crazy to think that he might say, I'm going to talk?
I mean, I'm not a lawyer. You are the lawyer. That sounds crazy.
Everything is crazy about
like that has happened so far under Joe Biden's watch.
Well, I mean, to be fair, though, the Democrats and Joe Biden have argued that it was wrong for Donald Trump's administration to stonewall or whatever. If they engage in the same tactics, as you say, or use the same precedents, wouldn't that be a political problem for them? I mean, the things you just put on the screen are legitimate investigations. Afghanistan, COVID, I mean, a lot of serious stuff that our government did over the last several years, it absolutely deserves a little bit of scrutiny. And if the Biden administration engages in, I mean, that's legitimate. If they, I don't think they should impeach Joe Biden. I mean, that to me is fringy. But that stuff, that's legitimate government stuff, and it deserves some kind of look-see from the government. And if Biden stonewalls it, to me, it's a political problem.
Well, we shall see how it all comes out in the wash. Even stranger. I don't think you can have a good reason why. Let me be clear.
Yeah, I was reading in the Clarion Ledger in Mississippi, the county sheriff there said, they can't use corporal punishment, so we think they were using the mask to try to scare the kids into doing what they were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and see, that's not acceptable.
Mindset.
That's not acceptable. That's unacceptable too, because I mean, both are traumatic.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even think about this from a law enforcement standpoint or even an employer standpoint. I can only think about it as a parent. And just hearing the voices and seeing the trauma that those kids went through, it's really hard to watch.
It's like a nightmare to think about your kids, anything bad happening, but knowing that they're feeling terror or, or in a position, because,
they're not even my kids, right?
You drop them off at a place, say, this is a safe place.
That's
These
right.
adults are going to take care of you. So they're feeling that way because you told them that.
Yeah.
If you can't get the kids to do what you want, be better at your job.
Figure out what these kids will go through later, having memories of
this,
this.
Especially at that age.
One of the parents said the kid was still having trouble sleeping. I mean, they were very afraid. I feel like we have an epidemic in this country of adults who can't figure out how to act in front of children right now. I mean, we have there's a bunch of people in this country right now that just can't exercise basic decency or common sense when it comes to children. It's outrageous.
Some are politicians.